This course is presented to you free of charge by TTJ Tech Services of www.ttjtech.biz and by Stir It Up of www.stiritup.com. And remember, stir is spelled with a U, not an I, so that's STURITUP.com. TTJ Tech Services and Stir It Up are pleased to offer this course to you, to the glory of God, and to the benefit of all those who listen.
This is session number 4 of iPad for All Computing. And we are excited about really getting into things. So far, it's just been primers. If you're listening on our podcast, this is only session 2 for you because we had done the primer a couple of weeks ago where we showed you what models of iPad are available and so on. But we're calling it session 4 because that's really what it is. And we're going to keep moving right along. Next week, we're really going to get into it with apps. By next Wednesday, we'll be doing our first experience lab. Praise God. And we're sure excited about that. We're going to be talking about how best to configure your devices to work together. And so with that, we're going to talk briefly about iCloud. iCloud is one of my favorite things to talk about because it's one of my favorite things to use. It is truly a way of life. And it is a big part of what we like to call the connected digital life. So we're going to talk about iCloud a little bit. We're also going to talk about other Apple services that you might be interested in signing up for, or then again, maybe not. It's up to you, personal preference, right? But we want to let you know that they're there and what they do. And then in the second half of today's session, we're going to start to do a very basic introduction to the iPad home screen orientations. We've already described the orientations, but we're going to demonstrate that a little bit in Control Center and however far we get. Whatever we don't cover in that today, we will continue on Monday. iCloud is, as I said, one of my very favorite things to talk about and use. A lot of times people are using it and they don't even realize that they're using it. It's kind of set up for you by default unless you go in there and explicitly change things, but some are not necessarily enabled by default. But the iCloud features and services are all going to begin, as most of your journey with Apple is going to begin, with having an Apple ID. So I believe we covered that, but I want to stress that again. If you do not already have an Apple ID, we highly recommend that you create one. If you already have one that you're signed in with on your iPhone or your Mac, for example, we definitely recommend using the same one on your iPad. And it is typically designed so that every person has his or her own Apple ID. Now, you can do like Trainer Cliff used to for a while, and like my family and I used to for a while, and share the Apple ID, but that's not really how it's designed. And more, they're getting away from that. They want you to use, every person has their own. Cliff and I both do it that way now, and we have family sharing set up, which we'll talk about, but that means every person in the family has his or her own unique Apple ID. That's the way they want you to do it. That's the way it works best. What is an Apple ID? It's an email address. So if you have an email address already that you like, you can attempt to use that as an Apple ID, and assuming it's not taken, that will be your Apple ID. If you don't have an email address that you're happy with or anything like that, you can actually create an iCloud.com email address as your Apple ID. And then it gets a little more complex as you move on, because later on, even if you create an Apple ID that's not at iCloud, like if you use, a Gmail, or you do like my family and I, and you use a Comcast Apple ID, email address, you can add an iCloud.com email address underneath that in order to get a free iCloud email. And then actually it's interchangeable. Like I have probably 7 or 8, I don't know, maybe even more now. I'd have to look on my device, but I have several addresses, and I technically can sign in with any one of them and get access to all the same stuff. Apple has made that really easy, and they don't nitpick. As long as you have that registered with your Apple account, you can do that. But you got to start somewhere, and so it's up to you. This is something that I suspect the vast majority of you already have. If you're in this iPad class by now, you probably already have an Apple ID, and your iPhone and your Mac, if you have one, are probably already signed in with that Apple ID. If you're not sure, you can check. And how do you check? Well, you pull out your iPhone, for example, and you go to settings. And at the very top of the screen, just past the search and dictate section, if you are signed in with an Apple ID, you're going to hear your name. It's going to say Sarah Potok, and then it's going to, read out the information, or Clifton Miller. It's going to read that out, right? And then if you don't have an Apple ID that you're using, it'll say sign in, all right, instead of saying a name. And so if you don't suspect that you have ever had an Apple ID, then it's time to create one. And again, you can use your favorite email address that you already have, an existing one if you want. And if not, it'll ask you to do that. Now, if you're not comfortable yet, which, it's our intention that by the end of this class you will be, and if you took our voiceover course, you might already be. But if you're not comfortable yet doing all of this on your iPhone or iPad, you can do it on your Mac from system settings, okay? But if you aren't even comfortable with that yet, maybe you're still a PC user and you're only comfortable with Microsoft Edge or something, you can actually go to a website to create your Apple ID as well. And that website is appleid.apple.com. I know I said that kind of quickly, but if you're taking notes, Apple ID, like appleid.apple.com. That's the web address. You can create a new one there. We really think you ought to have one, folks. An Apple ID is your gateway to all things Apple. It's the way you sign in. It's what you'll need to make purchases or download apps from the App Store, even if they're free. You will need an Apple account. An Apple account is used for so many things, not the least of which, of course, is iCloud. Now, iCloud, as it was described, I really, really like. And so I always go back to it because I like the wording that Steve Jobs used all the way back in 2011 when he first introduced iCloud. He said this, iCloud stores your content and then wirelessly pushes it to all of your devices. It's built right into your apps, so there's nothing to set up. It's wireless, it's automatic, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit. I'm sure I didn't say it exactly the way that he said it, but that is the gist of it, and it, in my opinion, is one of the best explanations for it. It is the idea that all of your stuff is available on all of your devices. I, for example, have 2 iPads, an iPhone, an iMac, an Apple TV, Apple Watch. Well, some of this we share, but, Apple TVs, Apple Watch, HomePods. All of my information, as far as it's relevant to do so, is available on all of these devices. I don't have Pages documents on my Apple TV. I don't have spreadsheets on my HomePods, right? Okay, but wherever it's possible and reasonable to do so, all of your information is going to sync automatically across all of your devices if you are signed in with the same Apple ID. And so that's where that becomes so important, right? And so I'm not going to take hours and hours and go over every iCloud service and every iCloud feature. That would be crazy. It would take too long, and I'd probably forget some anyway because there's so many. But just suffice it to say, when you set up your Apple ID, or you already have it set up, and you go into settings and you go into the iCloud section, you can see a list of every app that uses iCloud. And this includes things like your Apple Calendar, your contacts, your photos, your what they call iCloud Drive, which is actually a cloud storage location that you can make folders and stuff, but it's based on the idea that, different apps will store things there. Pages, Keynote, Numbers, right? Clips, iMovie, Siri, Safari, bookmarks, all these kinds of things are stored in iCloud. And they don't all take up personal storage space. Like, you can store calendar events in iCloud and you don't have to worry about, is this eating up my personal iCloud storage? You can store contacts in iCloud and you don't have to worry about, is this counting against my personal iCloud storage? There's a lot of things that you just really don't have to worry. The average user will never have to worry about. Another thing that works that way is any purchase content, like if you purchase apps on one device or even download free apps, you can go into the purchased section on another device and you can re-download those same apps free of charge at no cost, even if they were originally a paid app. If you bought it once, it can be re-downloaded on as many devices as you have at no additional cost. And that's using iCloud technically, but it's not storing in your own personal storage. So again, it's not counting against it. This also works with TV shows and movies. It works with a lot of your settings. It works with, it's integrated into Apple Music. If you pay for Apple Music, which we'll talk about shortly when we talk about Apple services, but if you pay for Apple Music, you also get the benefit of iCloud Music Library, which means that, if I add a song to my iPhone, I can also, or I create a playlist on my iPhone, I can also use it on my iPad, my Mac, my HomePod, my Apple TV. All of these devices work together and access the same information, the same data. My photos, that's so cool because now they even have an iCloud photo library, which they've had actually for a while, but now they have a family library too. And I'll cover family sharing in a minute. But they have an iCloud photo library that was actually introduced, I think, back in iOS 8. So it's been around a while. But it's wonderful because if I take a photo or a video on one device, it is available on all of my devices. Now, depending on how long the video is, it may take a few minutes to sync. It may not. It may be there instantly, but it might take a couple minutes. You have to be on Wi-Fi, I think, for those to sync. But it's going to sync, and it's going to be available on all your devices. And if you delete it or make an edit to it on one device, that is reflected on all of your devices. This works for documents, and it also works for your backups. So your devices, your iPhone, your iPad, they will back up. And by default, it's automatic. And you can also force a manual backup. We may cover this later on in the iPad course when we talk about some of the settings, but just know for right now that by default, they're going to back up automatically to iCloud. A lot of times that happens overnight when you have your device plugged in or whenever, but it's going to do regular backups. And if you ever need to set up a new device or restore a device, you have that there and you can just access it whenever you need to just by simply signing in with the same Apple ID. I mentioned your Safari bookmarks. Those things are synced with iCloud. And then iCloud has a whole range of what we commonly refer to, or Apple commonly refers to, as continuity services. Now, these continuity services basically mean that you can continue where you left off. So, in other words, I'm in the middle of typing an email on my iPad, for example, and all of a sudden, somebody says, hey, let's go out to dinner. And I decide, well, I'm not taking my iPad. And I'm so excited to go out to dinner that I just stand up and I grab my iPhone and I don't even finish the email. But I can actually go into my app switcher on my iPhone and I can immediately pull up that same email that I was working on. I didn't have to save it to drafts first. I didn't have to do anything. It just shows up as an in-progress task on my iPhone because I was working on it on my iPad and I left it open. So it's really cool. You can do that with Mail, with Pages, with Messages, with Safari. A lot of these different apps, and even some third-party ones, they support this kind of continuity. Also within continuity is the ability, for example, to answer phone calls on your iPad or your Mac when somebody calls your iPhone. Trainer Cliff always jokes with me because when he calls me, I have two iPads, I have my iPhone, and he can hear them ringing, when I answer on one device. Sometimes there's a little bit of leftover music playing on the other devices, and he'll say, there's that concert again, because I have three devices typically in the same room that are ringing. And sometimes the fourth one too, because my Apple Watch actually rings also. Didn't even think about that, but that is true too. So you have, and you can switch calls like back and forth. You can switch your calls to an iPad. You can switch them to a HomePod. You can, if you were talking on your Apple Watch, you can switch to the call to your iPhone, just move it over. This continuity is truly, it's incredible and it's impressive and it's unparalleled in any other platform. Really, I mean, it just is better than any other, the integration of it, the functionality, the reliability, it just works. It really does. Even even the integration between Apple TV and your iPad or iPhone, for example, like being able to use your iPhone or iPad as a remote and a keyboard for your Apple TV. These are continuity features, which, in a very real sense are part of iCloud. And iCloud supports Find My, which we definitely don't want to forget about. And we'll talk more about it later. But Find My is the ability to find a device, like your iPhone, for example. It's the ability to have your device play a sound if you know it's nearby, but you don't remember where you placed it exactly. It's the ability to lock a device remotely if you need to. It's activation lock, so that if in the unlikely event your device were to be stolen or get into the wrong hands, somebody else cannot just restore it to factory and start using it, right? If they do that, they're going to really have a paperweight on their hands unless they have your Apple ID and password. So it's really cool and very important, by the way. And iCloud also deals with the ability to use Apple Pay and Wallet and all of these things, pay for your purchases at your favorite restaurant or the nearby grocery store or whatever. So it is way more than I'm even mentioning, because more stuff is constantly being brought to mind, even as I'm talking to you. AirDrop, for example, sharing photos or documents or website links with people in close proximity. Yes, you can, email them or message them, but you also can use AirDrop if they happen to be in the same physical location to you in close proximity. You can use AirDrop. We'll describe what that is later. And then, of course, I told you we'd get to this. There's family sharing. So what family sharing is it's designed for really the best use case, which is that each person in the family has his or her own unique Apple ID. Family sharing says, look, I don't need my wife's work contacts, and she doesn't need mine. But we may want to share certain things. We may want to have a family calendar, right? Because we have kids, we have things we do, obviously, and we're going to want to do all these things together, praise God. So we want to share those. We may want to share our photos, and we want to be able to have them shared when we choose to share them, but also there's a degree of of intelligence here within the devices that says, oh, well, I happen to be taking a picture that has my son and my daughter in it. That's going to automatically be put into the family library. So there's all kinds of family features. Or if one person in the family purchases a movie or an app or a book or a TV show, everybody in the family can access that at no extra cost. And a lot of subscriptions can be shared between family members, and where it's appropriate to do so. I mean, some of them, there are other restrictions and terms and stuff, but in a very real sense, a lot of them can be shared. And so where that's appropriate, that works as well. So family sharing, if you have kids or even just a spouse, a parent, whatever, it is really, really useful and important that this be set up so that each person has his or her own area for stuff, right? But also then things can be shared at your discretion. It's not just unlimited. Like I had a student one time who was concerned when I said, you ought to use, because this person had family that they lived with. And they said, I said, it'd really be useful for you to use family sharing. And the person said, well, I don't want to have shared iCloud storage because I don't want my family members to be able to access my documents and me access it. Well, you can't. That's not how it works. It's not like that. Okay. You are sharing the storage, but you're not accessing each other's data unless you explicitly give permission for the data to be shared. So, for example, in the calendar app, I have a home calendar, which is only synced across my own devices. Okay. I have a work calendar, also only synced across my own devices. But then I have a family calendar that got created for me when I did family sharing. And anything that affects the whole family, any place that we're going together, events for the kids, all these things, or even just things that I think the family should be aware of. Like, oh, here's a class that I have to teach in the evening when everybody's going to be home. So I need to let you know that, from 7 to 8 on such and such a night, I'm going to be teaching. I put that on the family calendar, right? Because then everybody can see it and they can add to the calendar as well. And you can even share with people who are not in your family. You can create shared calendars and shared events. And you can create shared folders in iCloud Drive or individual documents. Collaboration is a really big thing. If I want to create a document or a spreadsheet or a presentation, and I say, well, I really need to collaborate with some other people on this. We do it at the TTJ team quite often. We create notes. For example, we'll create a note that says, okay, this is the tentative plan based on our discussion. This is the tentative plan for the 2020 whatever, training season. In this case, it was 23-24. And I made a note based on, meetings that we had as a TTJ team. And I, in the late summer, I made that note and I said, okay, this is what we talked about. These are tentative dates that I'm proposing. Now, everybody take a look at it and get back to me. Give me your, thumbs up or thumbs down or concerns or questions or whatever. So all I had to do was make a note, and I made it in a shared folder that is already shared amongst our TTJ instructor team. So as soon as I create that note, everybody on the team can access it. And then if anybody on the team makes a modification, makes a change to that note, everybody on the team can see it. And we'll get notified, hey, Trainer Cliff has modified the note, and we'll see what he did. And since it's Cliff, we'll reject his change right away. No, I'm just kidding. But that's how that works. So this is the idea of collaboration and sharing and integration and continuity and syncing and everything being available on all of your devices, no matter where you go. The only thing you got to have is a reliable internet connection, Wi-Fi or cellular, because at any given point, something might sync. And we're talking about SYNC sync, and it may update on your devices. So this is really, really useful. And I say all this now because I want you to understand that your devices are going to be able to talk to each other in a manner of speaking, right? To borrow from the vernacular. So you don't have to worry about creating separate calendars and contacts and things on each device. You can have confidence that everything you do will be on all your devices. I still remember the day when things did not happen like this. And you used to carry around your little flash drive, or even before flash drives, it was CDs. I had a couple of computers over the years that had built-in CD drives, DVD burners, we'd call them. And I almost always had a CD or a DVD in there ready to burn to in case I needed to save a document or something. And that was the way I would do things. And you always had to make sure, do I have the right one with me? So if you went out to dinner with somebody and said, hey, would you like to look at the presentation I'm working on for the meeting? You had to pray that you would remember to bring that correct flash drive or correct CD with you. And if you didn't do that, I can't show it to you now. I'd like to, but I left the drive at home or whatever. You don't have to worry about that anymore. Not at all. You use iCloud, praise God, everything is there on all your devices. Everything is there. And you know what? So if I go out to dinner and I say, well, I created this document on my iPad, would you like to see it? But I didn't bring my iPad. Well, that's okay. I'll show it to you on my iPhone. And as I'm showing it to somebody, they say to me, hey, I think you ought to make that font bigger or use red coloring there, or, you spelled that word wrong. I can fix it right here, right now, while we're munching on appetizers. And I don't have to wait till I get home. I fix it on my iPhone. By the time I get home, it's also fixed on my iPad. Or as sometimes happens when I'm working, especially when I'm working on documents that have to be very visual, that have to look right and everything, I will almost always run them by a sighted family member just to make sure that I have all my ducks in a row, in a manner of speaking. And so quite often it's my mom, because she is technically a partner with me in this business, and she's a professional designer. And, got an eye for that stuff. So I will sit down with her and I'll say, Mom, I need to create this. I've already done it, but here, let's collaborate on it. And you tell me, what you think. And then she said to me, well, this is good, but you got to fix, this, you misspelled this, or there's too much space here, or you got to, do this, whatever, make it bigger. And sometimes I'll just do it while she's watching and she can instantly see that change. And sometimes I'll know that her cursor is already in the right place. And I'll say, Mom, will you just get that for me? Just go ahead and fix that because you're right there. And it'll, and then do I have to save it? No, it's already done. It's on both of our devices. It's ready to go. So this is convenient. And it also brings me to another point. There are, when the iPad first began, and if you haven't watched, because I still have not made that post that I told you I was going to make, and I'm going to make it this week yet, praise God. But it's, just about the iPad because we're starting the class, and also the iPad's coming up on an anniversary here. And, so if you haven't ever watched the video of Steve Jobs introducing the original iPad, it's worth a watch just for fun. And it's on YouTube, and I'll provide a link to it. But, when he introduced it, he described it as a sort of in-between category. He said, is there room for a third category of device between an iPhone and a Mac? And he believed at the time that was the iPad. Since that time, the iPad has grown by leaps and bounds in capability, in functionality, in power to really become the computer if you want it to be. But it's still possible that you also might have a Mac or something. Everybody's different, and it's personal preference, as we often say. And sometimes you will read articles from the pundits and the tech bloggers and so on who are like trying to struggle to find the right place for the iPad to fit in. I don't think it has to be a struggle at all. Praise God, if your finances allow, you can have them all. You can have a phone, an iPad, a Mac, whatever. Or if not, you choose what. But it's something different to each and every person. It's whatever you want it to be. And it's really just like, I was thinking about this today as I was using my different devices, and I happened to be sitting there. I had my phone in my hand at that moment, and I wanted to see what time it was. Well, I didn't reach for my wrist. Not that it would have been that far of a reach, but I didn't reach for my wrist and wake my watch up to hear the time. I literally had my hand on the screen of the iPhone. So I just touched the top left corner and I heard what the time was right then and there. That's not a disparaging thing. That's not saying, oh, my watch isn't important. Oh, I don't know how to fit it in. No, it's that I'm using whatever device I have at that moment and whatever feels right for a particular thing. And that's the beauty of iCloud. It makes that so simple, so easy that whatever device I happen to be on at the time, that's what I will use. I hardly ever use a Mac. Really, the only reason I even got an iMac, truthfully, is because I have some clients who are taking Mac classes through me. And I believe that whatever I do in life, I need to do it as unto the Lord, which means I need to do the very best that I can. And in order to put my best foot forward in providing Mac training to people, I need to have a Mac. I need to be able to look at the stuff I'm training people on. So I have a Mac, okay? But I hardly ever use it. But now if I happen to be using it at that moment and I get a message, I'm probably going to respond to that message on my Mac. I'm not going to say, oh, well, I hardly ever use the Mac, so to keep consistent with that, I need to pick up another device. No, if my hands are already on the Mac keyboard and I get a message, I'm going to respond to the message on the Mac. And this is the beauty of the Apple ecosystem, my friends. This is where they just have it better than any other company, as far as I'm concerned, in the world. This is where they truly, truly shine. It's not the only place, but it's one really big differentiating factor. No other company does it as well as they do it. No other company has mastered the integration of hardware, software, and services to the extent that Apple has. And it is so awesome. Praise God. It's a blessing to be able to use these devices in this way. So that little introduction to iCloud will hopefully, if nothing else, whet your appetite for that, to be able to do that. Now, I've mentioned a few times, I made reference to personal iCloud storage, and I told you a lot of things that do not count against personal iCloud storage. But there are some things that do. For instance, your iCloud backups, they will use personal iCloud storage. If you choose to have an iCloud email address, emails that you receive will use personal iCloud storage. If you use iCloud for photos, the way I described it with the iCloud photo library, that will count against your personal iCloud storage. So we need to talk about personal iCloud storage. At no cost, absolutely free of charge, every person, every Apple ID is granted 5 gigabytes of personal iCloud storage. When that policy was first introduced, I think that was probably sufficient for a good portion of users. But nowadays, 5 gigabytes doesn't necessarily go quite as far as it used to because people are doing more things and whatever. But praise God, Apple has a very, very inexpensive option for you for just 99 cents a month. So just $1 a month, basically. You can take that 5 gigabytes and upgrade it all the way to 50 gigabytes. Now, that is pretty impressive. That's huge. But they have a lot of other options depending on how much you want to pay. You can have 2 terabytes, which is like 2,000 gigabytes. I think they go all the way. Maybe Trainer Cliff remembers the high number, and he can tell us later during the comment section, or if he wants to put it in the chat. But we don't typically use the chat during these things. But it's a very, very high number. It goes way beyond. I have my family and I have the 4 terabytes. And I'll explain how we got 4 terabytes in a moment. But you can go even higher than that. So they've got lots and lots of iCloud storage options now. You should be able to find something that you'll be happy with price-wise that also, will provide you all the storage you and your family need for the foreseeable future. And you can use it on all of your devices. And again, when I store things, I always store them in iCloud Drive whenever that's possible. Now, every once in a while, you'll run into an app that mandates using local storage for one reason or another, and that's fine. But anytime that it's possible for me to do so, I put everything in iCloud Drive. And again, it's for the same reason that I described to you earlier, because that way I don't have to say, well, now what device did I create that on? I got to make sure I use that same one. No, iCloud Drive means I can use it on any device at any time. So I really recommend that as a way of life. And you can upgrade your iCloud storage from within your settings by going to your name and then scrolling down and going to iCloud. And you could do that. But I also want to tell you about some other iCloud services that are available, or Apple services that are available. Some of them relate to iCloud and some do not, per se. But they are things that you may want to be aware of. And in particular, Apple has these different bundles. So I want to talk about those a little bit. The bundle name is Apple One, and Apple One has several different tiers. We might have to ask Trainer Cliff. In fact, I am going to break with tradition for a moment and see if he's available right now, because I think he was just making some changes to his Apple One subscription recently. So he, better than I, will be able to talk about the current bundle options and pricing. Apple has, I think, 3 different bundle tiers, and it's really not even so critical that I quote the pricing, because of course that's always subject to change. But my family and I have the highest bundle, and it includes all of the Apple services. And so I'll just tell you what these Apple services are. One such service is Apple Music. We are going to look at the music app in this iPad course. It's one of the apps on the agenda that we'll look at. And so you will get to see what Apple Music is like. But Apple Music gives you unlimited access to millions of songs, so that instead of having to buy your music, you can stream it. You can download it. You can listen to it on all your devices. You can make playlists that sync across all your devices. You can use the Apple TV and the HomePod to play your music. You can bring your own music in up to, I think it's 100,000 songs. I forget, and it will match it with high quality copies where it can. But all of this is part of the Apple Music subscription. And so that's one of the services you might want to look at. Another one is Apple TV Plus. Now, Apple TV Plus is a TV service that is a streaming service where Apple has its own original content. To be clear, It's mostly Apple's own content. I think they've got a couple of things. They have the Peanuts series, like the Charlie Brown Christmas and Thanksgiving and Great Pumpkin and some of the Charlie Brown stuff, and maybe a couple others, but really it's Apple original content. So like if you're looking for a streaming service that's going to have Friends and Full House and, NCIS and stuff, there are others out there that are not Apple TV Plus that have those. Apple is primarily focused on its own original content, but it is a great service. It's very, very high quality content. And so that's something that you also may want to consider. Another service they have is Apple Arcade. And Apple Arcade is very high quality games subscription service. When you play a game on Apple Arcade, there's no in-app purchases. There's no ads. It's just hundreds of games included for the price. Not a ton of them are accessible yet, because even though Apple has provided the framework to developers to make their apps voiceover accessible, the games being what they are, a lot of times very graphical and so forth, you might find some that work well with voiceover, but it's not a great number of them. Apple News Plus, that's another service. And I like it because it has a lot of articles. I'm not a big news person. I'm not going to go into all that, but I'm not a big news person. However, Apple News Plus gives you like hobby articles and documentary stuff. It gives you access to hundreds of magazines, audio stories, which are, narrated. And it's a really good experience. In addition to that, there is Apple Fitness Plus. There are workouts, exercise routines that are professionally created by fitness instructors. You can watch videos. You can use your Apple TV while you're using your Apple Watch to keep track of your exercise. It's a really, really fantastic program for those people who are into fitness and so forth. And then we have Apple iCloud Plus. iCloud Plus is what gives you additional storage. Remember I said you get 5 gigabytes free, and then you can upgrade. So iCloud Plus gives you different storage tiers along with some other features. One of those features is iCloud Private Relay that allows you kind of to use almost like what's like a VPN. And if you don't know what that is, it's basically a way of hiding your IP address in situations where you're not really convinced that the connection is secure, public Wi-Fi networks and so on. And there are some other things. So iCloud Plus is what gives you that. And what Apple has done is they've created these bundles called Apple One, and they include different features in them. The one that I have is the top tier for my family, and it gives us Apple Music, Apple Fitness Plus, Apple News Plus, Apple TV Plus, Apple Arcade, and 2 terabytes of iCloud storage with iCloud Plus. Then what I did is I actually went in and upgraded my storage even above and beyond that to 4 terabytes. I paid for an additional 2 terabytes each month. So that's what I do. That's what we do. And praise God, it's a great experience. But I've said all this just to say these are the Apple services. I apologize if I've missed any, but I don't think so. And these are the services that are available to you that you might want to think about. There's no reason that you have to decide today. You can pick one, try more later, try a bundle. There's no contracts with any of these. If you've never dealt with subscriptions, it is super easy to cancel subscriptions if you decide you're not really using them. You don't have to, go through complicated chats or phone calls with somebody trying to spend a half hour to convince you not to cancel. It's literally a toggle or a radio button in your settings. So you can always try a bundle or an individual subscription. All of these things that I've mentioned can be subscribed to individually, but you save considerably if you do a bundle. So it's up to you. It's a matter of what you think you're going to actually use or enjoy using. And that's a little bit of an overview of the Apple One bundles and iCloud Plus. And I think they're great services. I really do. Now, I don't know. Trainer Cliff, if you can unmute now, feel free to do so. And I'll also make Sarah a co-host now so she can unmute if she has anything to add about iCloud or iCloud Plus or Apple services. We're not going to do questions yet. We're going to talk a little about the basic iPad home screen first. The home screen, basic layout. The main area of your home screen, where all the app icons are, and that's really what we'll call that area, just the app icons. Okay, anything you tap on the screen, calendar or contacts or news or notes or app store, any of these icons that might not be on the dock for you, they're in the middle or whatever. That's your home screen area. And your app area also can have widgets. And if you remember from iPhone training, or if you don't, a widget is a little real-time access to information. So you want a quick glance at the weather without having to open the weather app. You can put a weather widget right on your home screen, and it'll tell you, the current conditions, any weather alerts, the current temperature. If you want to know your status of your battery, both of your, for example, iPad and AirPods and maybe Apple Pencil or whatever, you can put a battery widget. If you want the top news stories, you can put a news widget. A lot of apps have widgets, and they can sort of live right alongside of your app icons on the home screen. So we're just going to call that the app and widget area, or the app area, where all the app icons are. The next area we'll talk about is at the very top of the screen. It's the status bar, and it's a line of status information. Imagine that. You have your Wi-Fi symbol telling you the name and the signal strength of your current Wi-Fi network. You have your cellular signal if you have a cellular iPad. You have your battery status, the time of day. All these things are displayed in the status bar. Easiest way to find it with VoiceOver is take your finger up to the very, very top left edge of the screen and touch. You headed to work? Okay, love you. Have a good one. We'll see you tonight. The next area of your home screen is your page selector. And I found out, which I didn't even really know, I must admit, I found out from my mom, who is sighted, that it does not show a page selector anymore. It used to show like the number of dots. Now, when you look at it, it actually says the word search, just like VoiceOver does. At least that's the case on the iPhone. But that's because if you tap on it on the iPhone, it brings up the spotlight search. But on the iPad, I think it is still a more traditional page selector. In both cases, you can use it as a page selector. You can swipe up or down to change the home screen page that you're on. If you have multiple home screen pages for your apps, the more apps you have, the more home screen pages they'll need. That's not the only way to change pages, though. You can also, when your focus is on the app icons area, you can also do a scroll to change pages. And so if you are a VoiceOver user, that's a 3-finger scroll to the left or to the right. If you're a non-VoiceOver user, it's just a 1-finger scroll, like just a swipe to the left or to the right. And that's going to change your home screen pages as well. The dock. Now, this is where it's a little bit different from the iPhone. If you are an iPhone user, you know that the dock has 4 apps on it. By default, if you just bought a new iPhone and didn't change anything, it's going to be Phone, Safari, Messages, and Music. The dock on an iPad is a little bit different. First of all, the dock is split into 2 parts on the iPad, the left side and the right side. The left side is the same as your iPhone in that it houses the so-called favorite apps. Apple puts the ones there that they think. You can always change that to the ones that you want if they're different, but it's the favorite apps area. Unlike the iPhone, the dock of an iPad can hold far more than 4 apps. I think that I recall hearing a video reviewer of the iPad say that he had something like 16 apps on the dock. Now, the problem with that, especially for a sighted user, is that the more app icons you put on the dock, the smaller those icons are going to look. The font is going to be small. It's going to be a lot harder to read and see. And so I don't really recommend putting quite that many on there. But because the dock is persistent, and what do I mean by persistent? I mean that whatever home screen page you're on, the dock is unchanged. It's the same on every page. So the icons on the dock are the same across all your pages. You want to put your favorite, most commonly used apps down there. Now, by default, my iPad came with, and I believe that's probably still what Apple does, it has Messages, Safari, Music, Mail, Calendar, and Photos. Those are the 6 apps that Apple has chosen to put on the, and Notes. I forgot, there's 7. So I have Messages, Safari, Music, Mail, Calendar, Photos, and Notes. Yep, that is right. So 7 apps across the dock that are the same on any app home screen page that I would happen to be on. Those 7 apps are always going to be available there. And I'm pretty happy with those there. I do use those pretty frequently. You know, there are others too, but I'm pretty satisfied with those 7 down there on the dock. So that is the left side of my dock. The right side of the dock will house up to 3 apps, and it is known as the suggested apps area. The most common use for this right side of the dock is to display the 3 most recent apps that you have had open. But it's not the only use for it. That's why it's called the suggested apps area. Because sometimes it will display an app based on a particular behavior or time of day. For example, if every single morning I open up the news app so I can read the news while I'm sipping my coffee, it may display the news app to me in the morning on the right side of my dock. Another thing that will be displayed on the right side of the dock is the so-called handoff badge. Now, what in the world is a handoff badge? We're going to learn about it as we go through this course. But you remember me saying earlier today that if I am working on an email on one device and then I go out to dinner and I want to pick up on that email right where I left off, well, that's how I do that on an iPad. The handoff badge on the right side of the dock is going to display the current app that I'm using on my other Apple device, as long as that app supports handoff. So if I'm composing an email on my iPhone, the Mail app will show up as a handoff badge on the right side of the dock of my iPad. And so this is a very important use case, because if that happens, you can simply double tap on it to immediately jump right into whatever it is you were doing on another device. So the right side of your dock is the suggestions. It's the recently used apps. It's the handoff badge. It can be behavior, those kinds of things. That's what will appear on the right side of the dock. And then the final thing, there is actually a 4th thing on the right side of the dock after the 3 apps, and it is the app library. Now, the app library, for those who don't know, is a very convenient way to access every app that you have on your iPad or iPhone, but we're teaching the iPad here, so we'll stick with that. What it has is it has access to all of your apps by category, not by your personal category of your choosing, but by the category the app appears in the App Store. And then it also has a search field, and that search field is going to allow you to type in the name of an app you're looking for and see the results that match it. And it's also going to allow you to access an alphabetical list of every app that you have on your device. So I'm going to pull this up and show it to you, and then we're going to take comments and we're going to go to Q&A. But I'm going to pull this up and show it to you real quickly, and I will do a screen share, and I'll let you hear voiceover, because I know we might have some sighted folks who want to see the screen as well. So what I'm first going to do is go back to Zoom. I was showing you my dock, so I'm still on the home screen. But on the right side of my dock, there's an app under the suggestions called Zoom, believe it or not. I'm going to do my go home gesture. You know what that is? Swipe up from the bottom to go back to the home screen. When I do, it's also going to say picture in picture displayed, because I'll still have a Zoom window
on here.
Picture-in-picture displayed. Video. News. TV. Podcasts.
See, I'm just swiping.
Double tap to open.
That's my app icons. Up here is the status bar.
Wednesday, February 28th, 3:41 p.m. Web screen recording in progress. Microphone in use. Cellular. 4 of 4 bars. Signal. 71%. Status.
All these different icons on my status bar. Let's listen to my page selector.
Settings. Page 1 of 4. Adjustable. Adjust value down or scroll left to show today view. Swipe up or down with one finger to adjust the value.
And that's as I thought. It does not say search on the iPad, only on the iPhone. But it is the, you can, we will learn about Spotlight search later. You can go to page 2 and 3.
Page 2 of 4.
And you can go back down with one finger down.
Page 1 of 4.
We can also go one more down to the Today view where it has like all of the widgets. I'll show you though, I do have some widgets right on my home screen along with my apps. Here's some apps.
Contacts, Fred,
Oops.
Fred, Jeffrey, Cliff.
That's actually that's a contacts widget that happens to appear. Let's see.
Notes, notes, clock, 3.
So right now it's showing a clock, my notes, my contacts, but here's my apps themselves.
Home, camera, app store.
You see that?
Double tap to open.
And if I go to this Today view, which is like going down one more page or 3-finger scroll to the right.
Showing Today view.
I have like all the widgets I can possibly want.
Mitch McConnell to Michigan wins Terry photos. Playtime 2008.
Listen, photos.
Baby Carson. Featured photo. Image. Swipe up or down to select a custom action, then double tap to activate. White text in front of an image of a child smiling. Playtime with Baby Carson. Calendar. Wednesday, February 28th. No more events today. Weather. Everett. Location services. Mostly cloudy. Image. Expect light rain in the next hour.
So
Swipe up or down.
I'm not even going to keep going through all of them because there's a bunch more probably. But these are all the widgets that I have. You can edit at the very bottom of the screen.
Weather. Now. Weather. 60 minutes. Now.
There should be an edit.
Wednesday screen recording.
Oh.
Wednesday.
Well, anyway, there is. There's an edit button. I can reorder or add or remove widgets from this Today view. But let's just swipe up to go back to the first page. Now
illustration of a clock on.
Okay. I have my dock at the bottom of the screen, so let's touch that and listen to it.
Dock, music, messages, one unread message. Safari, music, mail, one calendar, Wednesday, photos, notes. Double tap to open.
There's that left side of the dock. Now we're going to jump over to the right side by swiping to the right.
Suggestions, Zoom, files, App Store, App Library.
And there's the App Library.
Double tap to open.
So if I open the App Library, what we have is everything sort of presented here by category. I'll just randomly touch somewhere on the screen.
Arcade, create and play. The Oregon Trail. Zone Pop Party. Arcade folder, 13 apps. Creativity, Procreate, Clips, Freeform. Creativity folder, 9 apps. Other, Feedback, Health, Sketches, School, Maps. Shopping and food, Amazon, Apple Store, Tasty.
Okay, you get the idea. They've categorized things based on the App Store category designation. They show you 3 of them, and then you can tap on the folder, and it will show you the rest of them. Like some of them said there were 9 apps or whatever. But my favorite thing about the App Library is the search field. Because if you go to the search field...
App Library, search field. Double tap to edit.
We can open that up.
Insertion point at end.
We now have an on-screen keyboard. We can type the name of an app we're looking for, but we also have the alphabetical listing. If I swipe to the right...
Cancel, button, section index, adjustable. Swipe up or down with one finger to adjust the value.
And remember, we're not teaching VoiceOver in this class today, but just remind you what a section index is. You can swipe up and down to go through each letter of the alphabet. Our sighted users can see the letters. You can tap on what letter you want. And so let's say that I'm looking for, I don't know. Let's say I want to find the Max app. I want to watch a show on the Max streaming service. So I will...
Section in B, C, D, I, J, K, L, M, selected.
Now I go to the right.
Magnifier, mail, maps, Max.
And there's Max. And if I keep going,
Measure. Messages. Music.
there's a lot of other M's. But you see, that's how easy it is to get an alphabetical listing of all of the apps on your device using the app library. Now, when I'm finished here,
Cancel.
I will cancel that.
Cancel.
And I will swipe up to go home. It's going to put me on the last page, I do believe.
Settings.
No, it's not. Because, you know why? Because I got there from the first page. It's going to put me there on whatever page I was in. That's what it is. Whatever page I was last on. Okay, last thing for today before we go to questions is just a reminder about Control Center. And we will teach you notifications next week. I want to wait until Monday to go over that. So Monday, before we start our app explorations, we're going to look at notifications. All right, praise God. But I want to just do a Control Center. I want you to get used to the new gesture, folks, because if you tap on the status bar, you'll still hear this. You'll still hear the little hint.
Wednesday, February 28th. Status bar item.
Now listen.
Swipe down with 3 fingers to reveal notifications. Swipe up with 3 fingers to reveal the Control Center.
Okay, and so on. It reads a lot more stuff that I'm not going to let it read right now, and just for the sake of time and everything. But really, Apple wants us to teach the new gestures, and so you don't have to do that 3-finger thing or anything. You don't even have to touch the status bar first to get to Control Center. All you need to do is swipe down from the corner of the screen. And for sighted users, it's that simple. Just swipe down. The right corner should do it, left. But if you have VoiceOver, you need to first make sure you hear that little blip sound when you touch the top edge of the screen.
Wednesday,
Hear that little noise? There, that little noise. Once you hear that, swipe down to the second blip.
Control Center.
And now we're in Control Center. And just a reminder that Control Center is where a lot of these hardware controls are, like
Cellular data. Switch button. On. Airplane mode. Switch button. Off. Wi-Fi. Bluetooth. AirPlay audio. Button. Media controls. iPad. Not playing.
And I have a whole bunch of other stuff. If I keep swiping through here.
Pause. Next track. Lock rotation. Screen mirroring. Brightness. 32%. Volume. 62%. Focus. Button. Accessories and scenes you add in the Home app will appear here.
Some of my
home.
Some of my smart home accessories.
Garage main garage door. Living room LG WebOS TV. Basement TV. Entrance front door. Kitchen coffee maker. Hallway Christmas tree. Mute. Switch button.
Here's
off.
a mute switch.
Double timer. Button.
I have a timer in there.
Double camera. Button.
Quick access to the camera.
Apple TV remote. Button.
And notice,
double tap and hold to show more controls. Actions available.
That's a good reminder about the long press gesture, which for sighted folks is just a tap and hold, and for VoiceOver users it's a double tap and hold. Because remember, sometimes it's going to do more. It's going to give us contextual options if we do that. So that's good to remember.
Code scanner.
I've got a code scanner in here.
Music recognition.
So you can customize the controls.
Double tap and hold to show more controls.
I'll get out of this.
Available. Home.
Okay. You can customize the controls by going into settings. We're going to look at the settings on Monday when we start talking about split screen. But if you're confident enough, you can start playing with them even before Monday. So this is just kind of a whirlwind tour of the basic, home screens, because Monday we taught you how to set up an iPad. Now today we taught you what you're going to see once you have the iPad set up.
You told us about the new gesture to get to the Control Center. Do you want to tell us the new gesture to get to notifications, or would you rather save that till next time?
Well, I appreciate you asking that, and I do want to save the actual topic of notifications for next time, but I don't mind telling you the gesture. It's really just a continuation of the Control Center gesture. You just need to continue swiping down even farther until you hear the third little blip sound. So it's, tap on the top of the screen and find that little blip and then swipe to the third blip. It's the exact reciprocal of the app switcher gesture, if you're familiar with that.
Say that one more time. It's the what?
It's the exact reciprocal. It's the exact opposite of the gesture that takes you to the app switcher.
Oh, I'm not sure about that because my iPad has a home button. So.
Oh, okay. Well, interestingly, the home button iPads do still support the gestures, but yeah, I could see where for the app switcher, you would just double click the home button instead. But yeah, so
Exactly.
right. So the control center and notification gestures, though, do definitely work even on the iPads with the home button. God bless you and have a great weekend and a great rest of your week. We'll see you back here on Monday.
Thanks for joining today's session. Didn't get your question answered? Want a free consultation or some paid one-on-one training? Email us at support@ttjtech.biz or support@stiritup.com. And remember, stir is spelled with a U. That's STURITUP.com. Or check out our websites for additional free resources. That's ttjtech.biz or stiritup.com. I'm Trainer Cliff. Thanks for joining us. God bless. See you next time.